I know renting always gets a bad rap. It's, oh, why are you paying somebody else's mortgage? And like, why don't you own? You're building equity in it. And it's as if owning is just this automatic like win. Everyone should be owning. Owning does have its pros. I could totally, I'm on that boat. I understand. But renting isn't always bad. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. But before we jump in, if you're new here, welcome. We have room for you and we would love to have you. But first, my name is Josiah. I'm a Harvard-trained ex-Wall Street professional helping real people make their money work smarter, not harder. Take control of their money, helping people take control of their money. The goal is not to say owning is better or renting is better. The goal is to really understand the choices. The choices that you're making if you're owning, the choices that you're making if you're renting. And today we're going to sink our teeth into renting. And you just want to know where money leaks if you own, or where you could really position yourself if you're renting for optimal, to optimize your money. Location and lifestyle flexibility. If you rent, say you are in New York, for instance, you can have access to the choice neighborhoods and maybe it's closer to work for you for a fraction of the cost because, you're closer to the train station or you're closer to work or you're closer to school or whatever the case is. You don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy that brownstone in that neighborhood, that choice neighborhood. But maybe you can rent it for a year and you know that, okay, I'm doing this for this time period and I have access to all the things that I want to have access to and it's this defined period and I can afford it. Maybe that's what you do because even owning the homes are priced way more than your own capabilities anyways. For instance, maybe in New York, the average home is knocking on $1 million, but to rent it, you can still rent for about $3,500 a month. No one is asking you to put down, even at best 10%, which is $100,000 just to get your foot in the door. You're not putting this heavy capital down. You can rent, you pay a couple fees here and there, but nothing to the tune of $100K that you would have had to pay if you wanted to own it. And you still have access to the amenities. You still have access to the things that the neighborhood, affords you, whether it's access, amenities, choice locations. You still have access to that. And, renting can also help you test the neighborhoods. You want to be in this neighborhood you think you want to buy, but you don't know what it would feel like. Maybe you rent in that neighborhood for a little bit and, see how that goes. You don't like it? You can just up and move when your lease is over. You didn't commit long term. So it's okay. You don't have to think about selling or what. Your lease is over. You shake the landlord. And it's been great. It's been great talking to you. It's been great doing business with you. Now I'm out because I didn't really love it. It wasn't what I thought it would be. That's exactly the optionality and the choice that renting can give you. If you bought, you'd be trapped, whether it's socially or financially. You would have to get out of that long-term commitment. And it is indeed a process. It's not just as easy as like, oh, here are your keys. I don't owe you any more dime. Goodbye. No. Even renting can get messy. And what does that look like? Oh, we would hold on to someone's security deposit because you messed this up, you messed that. That is as messy as renting gets. But ownership, whew. You can no longer go back to the bank and say, you know what, this didn't quite work out, so I want out. No, you are committed and you will have to go through the process to actually get out. And depending on the economy at that time, depending on where the market is, that may be as easy or as difficult as it could really get. Number 2, maintenance. Oh my goodness. And hidden costs. That, ownership, it just sucks you in. Price to maintain, whether it's your yard, if you have HOA, and HOAs these days are just doing the absolute most. HOAs are really doing the most these days. But whether it's your HOA, whether it's your HVAC, whether it's your roof, whether it's your foundation, anything can happen. When you own, all of that is on you. It's cost that you have to bear. When you rent, no, you just place a phone call to your landlord or whomever, the property manager. It is not for you. It's not a cost for you to bear. Somebody else will come and take care of all of that. And they still need to put the home in a nice condition for you to live in. So they actually need to take care of it. It's not like they can just ignore it. We haven't even talked about property taxes. Property taxes are usually stable, but I've also seen situations where a particular community is growing, and because of that, they're pricing that into the taxes of the properties in that area, because now they think, oh, we're developing all this access for you, and then you see a tax bill go from whatever percentage that it was, and it's up plus 1, 2, 3% off the value of the property. And that can be very significant, because you think about the nominal value of the property and think about what it a 1% or 2% jump in that can look like and how that can affect your monthly bill. And then we're not thinking about landscaping. You're not thinking about plumbing. Oh, your toilet went out. Fantastic. Put a code through. Oh, you haven't cut your grass. Well, now you don't have to think about it. It's somebody else's responsibility to find a landscaper to come take care of that for you. As a renter, you're just renting. At best, you communicate with the landlord that, hey, something is a little bit off. Oh, the heat just went out. Well, it's somebody else's responsibility. For you, you have your predictable cost. You know what you're paying, whether it's for utilities, whether it's for your rent, for at least for a time period, and no one is asking you to come out of pocket for unforeseen expenses at that point in time. And that means that you can prepare for investment, you can plan your cash flow appropriately. You don't have to put such huge reserves for, material things that go out in homes, that they do usually go out maybe, once in 5 years. But when they do go out, it is a pretty penny that comes out of your pocket. But as a renter, that is not your prerogative. You can decide to move your money to investments, to growth, to optionality, to either grow your stability cash, i.e. your emergency fund. You have that predictability that you can work with, but as an owner, maybe not so much. Market exposures and timing. Oh God, because no one ever knows what the top of the market is, what the bottom of the market is. You don't know. You only know in hindsight when it has happened. And so as a renter, you are not locked into any timing. You're not buying at the peak because you're not even in the market at all. And maybe it could even be beneficial to you because when you can see the pullback happen, and you can then say, all right, strategically, this sounds like a pullback. I do want to get in the market now. I have the benefit of hindsight because I hadn't bought, and now there's a pullback and I can see that it's a pullback in the real estate market, then now I can buy. I know that the markets, well, both the stock market and the real estate market, everything was doing so well in the immediate post-COVID era, and now things are just not where they were. And if you were renting, you have the option to then say, all right, I want to then take advantage of this current buyer's market. Before, it was a seller's market where things were doing really well and people were just getting locked into the peak of the market. But now, because you have that option, you've been renting, you can say, all right, I think it's a good time for me to jump in. But of course, we've talked about how sometimes it's not really a direct correlation, but sometimes because demand goes up, when interest rates goes down, the prices of the homes could follow that trend and vice versa. But of course, also, I just want to level set. I'm not asking you to buy now. I'm saying that if you had been planning to do so, you may, but don't say because your neighbor did this, or I'm going to do this before rates rise again or rates fall or whatever. Make sure that it is wrapped and contextualized around your own life. The point that I'm making is the optionality that you have, that if you're renting, you can decide that, all right, I'm going to pull the trigger now because I now have the benefit of being able to do so in a market that I think, is favorable to me. You're not locked into the markets or the timing, especially for people who bought when the market was at the top. Of course, they didn't know that the market was at the top. If everybody knew that the market was going to fall, people would hold on to their cash. Nobody knows, and nobody's able to time the market. But now you have the optionality to do so because you have been renting. Number 4, simplicity and predictability. You know that out of your budget every month, this is the amount that goes out. This is the amount that you can plan around. And maybe there's a slight increase in rent the next time you want to renew your rent. But maybe sometimes there isn't actually. You at least, your line items are simple. However, for someone who's owning, they have to factor in all these other things into their, underwriting can come back and say, hey, we know it's, you've been paying this amount over the past year, but this is what your escrow looks like now, and this is how your payment is going to change. So there could also be an increase in your mortgage. Maybe not so much, but there could be. If there's a deficit in your escrow, you will have to pay it off in your, monthly payments going forward. So I know that there's this whole idea that, rent can continue to increase. Your mortgage could as well if your taxes are changing, if certain inputs that goes into what your mortgage number looks like are rising. If your insurance is rising, your mortgage payments could also be rising. But on the rent side, things are simpler. There are not that many inputs, and you can sort of control it. You can predict what you are going to be paying for at least a foreseeable future versus if you are relying on all these other macroeconomic factors to sort of make your number work for you. Simplicity, I know it sounds boring, but it's freedom. It's financial freedom. Everything is simple. I know what I'm charging towards. My cash flow is predictable, and oof, financial bliss. Number 5, investing power and opportunity cost. So you want to buy a house. Yes, you have to put some money down depending on how much your property is. You're thinking somewhere tens of thousands of dollars, 50K maybe, 20K depends on the price of the home. 100K, like we've discussed earlier, could be depending on your location. And if you think about actually you would have to bring that raw cash to the table. But if you had that raw cash and you had put it in the market and, you're thinking somewhere around like a conservative 7% annual growth, a 50K can double in about 10 years. But that's capital that you've now put in a property. And not to say that you shouldn't, but I'm saying there's that opportunity cost that you're foregoing. So renting can let you invest your money, at least your huge capital. Whereas if you own, you actually have to put that down or put that into the property and hope for a later payout. Hopefully you get that, but a future payout. Renting can, free up your cash. You can say, all right, I'm going to use this money. I'm going to start a business, or I'm going to put it in the market. I'm going to invest this differently, and I'm going to have this generate some type of income for me. I'm going to use this, maybe, slap something on it to try and grow that money. But if you were buying, you would have to come to the table with that raw cash, that capital, and it's gone into the home. Of course, not to say that you cannot get that money back out, but you have to wait for a liquid event. So you sell the property at a price point that makes sense after all the legal fees, after all the costs, closing costs that you have to pay for. Then you think, all right, did I actually make my money back? Did it work out? But that's not something you can predict from the point that you're buying the property. You can only hope that the market will behave and things will stay steady. You can extrapolate, but is it guaranteed? There's no guaranteed outcome. Number 6, short-term versus long-term goals. All right, how are you thinking about your life? Do you want to be agile and nimble? Do you want to be able to hop on the next thing when it comes up? Then maybe, renting is for you because you can hop around and test neighborhoods. You can rent and see what that looks like. You can save your money strategically, like we mentioned. Owning, yes, you are building equity, understood, but that equity only converts at a liquid event. If you never have a liquid event at the right price that you were hoping for, that equity may just be radio money. So with owning, you can build equity. That's fantastic. But, can you save? Maybe not so much. That's neither here nor there, depending on how you manage your finances. But yeah, you can customize. You can make it what you want. You can do your own thing. It's your own space. And I've heard that one too many times. It's my space. That's fantastic. That's your space, but also comes at a cost. And that's what we're talking about. But here's the thing. If you buy at the wrong price, if you have the wrong entry price, I can really feel like shackles because maybe you're not able to get out in the way that you want to get out. That liquid event may not be as beneficial to you because you were locked in at a high rate going in. The bottom line is your house shouldn't control you. You should control it. Renting or buying. Neither of them should control you. Cash flow alignment. What does that look like? What does your cash flow actually look like? If your housing costs are above 30% of your income, 30% is usually the rule of thumb, but I don't even know who made that number. But if it's above 30% of your income, maybe you're spending a little bit too much. My goal is to make your housing costs as little as possible. So if it's 1%, 10%, it doesn't have to be 30. You don't need to say, all right, I have 30% of my income at 5K, so let me go look for something that will cost me 5K. No. If you can get something that's reasonable and bring that percentage even lower, the better for you. Now, if you're making 120K a year and you are spending, about $3,000 max a month on rent, well, you'll be stretched if you do a little bit more. So 120K, we're thinking after taxes, and even then that's saying your blended rate of 20% tax. After taxes, you're sort of around 100K, maybe even lower. Then 3K should probably be your max. If you're renting, a 3-5 home would be a little bit too much. And it'd be, a little bit of a stretch. And if you're thinking about getting a mortgage, over 500K, that may come back to bite you because, now you're knocking on $4,000, $5,000 in mortgage, especially at today's rates. That could be a pretty penny and that could really bite. And you don't want a time bomb just waiting to happen on you, especially if going in, look at the raw numbers and bake in contingencies, because that actually shows up when you least expect it. And the last thing we're going to talk about is the non-financial wins of renting. Renting could be, it could really clear your head. It could save you the stress of shouldering all the burdens and all the responsibilities of owning. You want to travel, you want to make a quick pivot, you want to move out of state or out of town, you want to move closer to family. Renting does give you that flexibility to just up and go. There was a situation that happened with one of renters who unfortunately lost a family member and wanted to be closer to her remaining family just to get through that grieving period. And because she was a renter, she could just up and move. She didn't have to wait to sell a property or wait to, she could really have that flexibility at that time, at that very critical time for her family. Are the benefits that you have, especially when you're not tied to an illiquid asset. And owning, you can't move the house. Like, even with your best intentions, you can't carry the house on your head and be like, look, I'm gone. No, if you wanted to relocate, if you wanted to move out of town, the home is going to be in the same location. And now you would have to find ways either to get rid of that asset or to find people to manage it. Now, all of these things are not saying that owning is bad. It's just saying that renting usually would get a bad rep, but shouldn't. Isn't it just an option that we should all have and part of the cocktail of life? If renting makes you happy, maybe go for it. Maybe understand the trade-offs, okay? Maybe I'm not building equity, but what does that even mean? Maybe I don't want to be here for a long time, so getting myself into a longer-term commitment doesn't really make logical sense because of my goals, of my personal goals. Renting is an option that should not be shamed. Renting is, you can rent and live a very optimal life financially. No one says that you must own to build wealth. You don't have to always own to build wealth. Now, should you own if it makes sense for you, for your context? Well, you do it very responsibly. Do not own something that is just puts you in a handcuff or something that's a stressful, chaotic, or makes your life stressful and chaotic, or a time bomb waiting to happen. Don't do that, because when the pressures unload on you, you may wanna run for cover. And that's why you're listening to this channel right now. You don't want to build a life that you can't control. Your life should, reinforce your peace and not reinforce your stress. So yeah, renting isn't failure and owning isn't a guaranteed win. You should know that. Because you own doesn't mean that you're not larger than life and better than everybody else. No, you own, great for you. It works for your context, fantastic. That's okay. But both of them have trade-offs, and that's, we've talked about all the good things about renting today. We could talk about all the good things of owning as well, but both of them have their pros and their cons, and you should be educated and informed enough to know both the pros and the cons of both sides of the coin. If you ask me, what is the smarter move for me to decide? Well, what are your numbers? What is your lifestyle? What is your stability? What's your optionality? Where are you on the strata? Where do you want to be? You have to contextualize all of this information to your person. What are the things that are riding on you? Do you have dependents? Do you have anything that may take you out of state? Do you have pleasures and dreams of, just not being in one location? Is this the location for you? How are you thinking about it? If this is the location for you, do you want a good school district? All of these different things. You want access to your job. Are you going to be on this job for a long time? Do you see yourself being on this job for a long time? What if layoff happens? What if you decide to leave your job? Will this property still serve you if you're owning? There's so many things to consider, and you have to really go in, not avoiding the research, not avoiding the knowledge. And that's why you're here. You can start here. Ask yourself the right questions and let's talk about it. Is renting a part of options that you have utilized in the past, or are you renting currently? Like we established, it's not failure. You could even be living your absolute best life renting right now, and people who have bought may just not be doing the same. Now, if you love content like this, well, you better brag about it. And comment down below. Let me know how you're thinking about renting versus owning. Of course, subscribe, because we have room for you. I want you to subscribe, join the family. I would love for you to do so. It is free, so why not? And while you are at it, make sure you turn on your notification bell so that whenever next, which is weekly, whenever next I drop a video next week, you'll be right here to hear about it first and give me your thoughts on whatever topic we're discussing. Of course, if there's anything else you would like me to touch on, I would love to hear from you. Let me know what topics you want me to speak about, and I will be happy to do that. Well, until next time, I will see you in the next one.